Welcome to another episode of the Kitchen Table Historian Podcast. In case you were wondering, we're not a podcast about food. We're going to tell you the stories that your grandma didn't want you to hear. I'm John Brassard Jr., your host and guide, and together we're going to take a stroll along some of the world's less traveled paths. True crime, dark history, the paranormal, ghosts. These things, and sometimes more, are all on the menu. Now please, take a seat, get comfortable, and make yourself at home. Do I have a story for you? Hampton, Illinois is a quiet river town nestled into the bluffs alongside the Mississippi River. It was probably the last place that Jim Arpy ever expected to hear about a haunted house. And yet, there he was, ready to investigate one. Jim Arpy worked for one of the biggest newspapers in the region, the Times-Democrat. He had reported on all kinds of things over the years, and like most other reporters, was always on the lookout for a good story. And come on, who doesn't love a good ghost story? Still, Arpy remained skeptical. He wasn't dismissing the story outright, but he made sure to take things with the proverbial grain of salt. It was the late 1950s, and the amateur ghost hunting trend that would take the nation by storm was still decades away. There were many people during that time who outright dismissed any claims of the supernatural, and anyone who said they had experienced something along those lines were dismissed as mistaken, deluded, or maybe even crazy. To make matters worse, Arpy couldn't dismiss the possibility that these people were lying outright. In his line of work, there was always some people who were just looking to get attention. They liked the thrill of seeing their name in print and having people ask them questions about their story. These kinds of individuals would do almost anything for that kind of rush. Regardless, the veteran reporter had been intrigued by what the homeowners had told him, and so he had decided to go out and see for himself. Along with a photographer with the paper, Arpy headed out to Hampton to look at the house. As they drove down the shaded river road toward their destination, Arpy began to think about what the couple had told him. They had said that there were plastic curtains hanging between their living room and bedrooms. One night, as they sat there in the quiet of the house, the curtains suddenly moved. They had pushed inwards and then swung back into place, just like someone had walked through them. Needless to say, it surprised them. At first, they tried to pass it off as normal. Maybe it was the wind, or maybe they had caught on something and then worked themselves free, falling back into place. But there had been no wind, and neither one of them had noticed them hanging strangely or bound up in any way. The next time it happened, the phenomenon became harder to dismiss. The time after that, harder still. By the time it became a normal occurrence, the couple reluctantly accepted it as something that they just could not explain. If that had been the only thing that was going on in the house, then perhaps the couple would have just accepted it and moved on. But soon, other things began to happen as well. Objects began to fall off shelves even when there was no one near them. Once again, the couple couldn't find any explanation. Other times, they could hear what sounded like someone walking on their roof. But by far, the worst thing were the screams. On several occasions, the deep silence of the house would be broken by an unseen woman's blood-curdling screams. It sounded as if she was fighting for her life, but try as they might, the couple could never find a source for the sound. All of this went through Arpy's head as they approached the house. It was a simple basement-style house surrounded by woods. There was nothing unusual about it. Nothing made it stand out from any number of other houses in the region. From all appearances, it was just another house. Arpy and his companion walked up to the front door and knocked. Soon they were greeted by the homeowners. After some friendly small talk, the reporter got down to business. Once again, the couple recounted the strange things that had been happening to them. Arpy listened close, taking notes and asking questions as he needed. At no time did they seem insincere to him. They seemed to be telling him the truth, or at least what they believed to be the truth. And the more they talked, the more apparent it was how terrified they really were by what was happening around them. When he was finished, Arpy thanked them and left. He went through the area, interviewing some of the neighbors. They told Arpy that they had also heard a woman screaming, just like the couple had described it. Depending on who we asked, Arpy got different answers. Some said that the sound came from the abandoned mines in the area. During the 19th century, large coal deposits were found in the area surrounding Hampton. Some individuals dug mine shafts down and extracted the coal, but the deposits had long since played out. However, some locals claim that some of the old mine shafts still existed. They said that the sound could be the wind howling through those old tunnels, or maybe some animal had gotten into one and it amplified their cries and howls. Others, however, offered a much more bizarre explanation. They said it was the ghost of a murdered woman. According to them, a local man had become angry with his wife years prior. He was so angry that in a fit of rage, he grabbed her and began to drag her to a nearby well. She struggled as hard as she could, and the entire time she screamed, desperate to escape. But it was all in vain. He threw her down the well and left her to die. Some said that the woman's ghost still cried out in the afterlife, her terrified screams carrying through the woods. Ultimately, for his own reasons, Arpy decided against writing the story. While they had invited him to talk about their experiences, the couple was absolutely adamant that he not use their names. Like so many people, they were afraid of what other people might think of them. Arpy lost track of them. They never contacted him again. Maybe they learned to live with their ghost. Maybe they just sold the house and left, leaving the new owners to deal with the problem. Whatever they did, the haunted house never gained notoriety in the region. We can only hope that, if it was a ghost, that it found some semblance of peace at last. You have been listening to the Kitchen Table Historian podcast. If you like this story, please consider giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. While you're there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of these great stories. I would also ask that you tell your friends about the Kitchen Table Historian. It helps generate more interest in what we're doing here, and that means that more people can hear these great stories that your grandma didn't want you to hear. If you're curious to see what's going on at the table, including upcoming episodes and events, please check out the Kitchen Table Historian on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This podcast was written and performed by John Brasser Jr., with the title music performed by Bo Moonlight and additional music provided by Storyblocks.